All right, now to our next conversation. We'll be unpacking the EnterpriseNGR State of Enterprise 2026 report. Is Nigeria's financial sector outperforming the rest of the economy or driving its transformation? We see banks report record profits. The real question now is how much of this momentum is trickling down to households and businesses through affordable credit. Now we're gonna, try and tackle this disconnect between financial growth and real-world productivity. We're debating how to better channel these massive capital tools into agriculture and infrastructure, and what urgent policy reforms are needed to ensure that sector service, is servicing, as a genuine engine for jobs, higher incomes and sustainable economic stability over the next 5 years. So we'll unpack this report now with Tayo Muritala as the head of research at EnterpriseNGR. Good to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you. Morning.
Yeah, so looking at the financial sector, Nigeria's financial sector by the numbers at this point, we're seeing banking assets 180.37 trillion naira, according to your report. The share of the GDP is 41.8%. This is for financial banking assets. So, stock market capitalization over about 150 trillion. Pension assets 29.52 trillion. Insurance premium about 2.3 trillion. By the numbers, there. But obviously, stock market capitalization has risen more than that. So we have all of this money, flowing, at this point through financial services. But it seems there's a disconnect. If you're trying to buy anything now, if you're trying to buy real assets, you're trying to buy a house in Nigeria, you're trying to buy a car, you're taking cash there. Yeah, we have, banking assets and, banks, giving out all this, big earnings and all of that. Yet, the average household still has to pay cash for stuff. Talk to me about this report.
All right. Thank you very much. The State of Enterprise report is an annual publication of EnterpriseNGR, and that report actually dissects the financial and professional services sector across 9 classifications of banking, insurance, asset management, capital market, non-interest finance, pensions, fintech, sustainable finance, professional services. All right. So it essentially looks at challenges and performance across this classification. Okay. The primary objective of that publication is more or less to create awareness about how the sector in general is performing. Okay, and also to rally support, from regulators and policymakers on how we can support and advance growth in this sector.
All right. So, looking at this disconnect now, seeing that the financial services sector, you did mention what makes up financial services, and it's quite a lot at this point. But there's so much money flowing through these systems. For the banks now, it's a high interest rate environment, and that's helping them make so much money, right now. But when it's not reflecting, when you look at growth, in the economy, you see financial services doing great, but the economy, the real economy is struggling. How do you balance that?
Well, essentially, and that's where the work is, right? How do we ensure that this, beyond the headlines, how do we ensure this amount of wealth doesn't stay concentrated at the top of the economy? How do we ensure that it trickles down, to the household level, to the business level, all right? So that is actually what we need to start doing after, seeing this performance. And 3 things to start focusing on, okay? So the first thing is, how do we expand credit to ensure that businesses and individuals can get credit at cheaper and affordable rates. Okay, so that is one. The second thing we have to look at is to deepen inclusion. So the products and services that are driving this performance, they should not be limited to Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja. Okay, I mean, there are other places, particularly in rural locations, that are not yet served adequately. And that should be the concentration. And finally, is the fact that, I mean, this performance is as a result of several policy choices, good policy choices. So we need to keep the momentum and ensure that we focus on advancing the sector, the growth of the sector. And of course, there is what we call a lag time before the effect we are seeing here starts. I mean, the impact is being felt at the household level. So that impact could take, let's say, 6 months or thereabouts, depending on the drivers, that are driving, the trickling down.
Right.
Okay. So, but essentially, I think everyone has a role to play. The policymakers, have a role to play. The operators themselves still have a role to play. Ensure that products are more innovative products, come up, okay, and also be able to serve at much cheaper prices.
Okay, we've talked about affordable credit at this point. That's a very important arm, when it comes to, financing. But there's also another arm, patient capital. And, when you look at, the banks, pension, and capital market sectors, they're not that patient. When you look at, some of the tenants there for some of these loans, they're not patient, even for mortgages and all of that. How do we make them more patient? Because if you compare us to, other developed economies, you see that, the rates there about, 6% mortgage rates, and they get up to 30, 20 years. How do we get patient capital in Nigeria?
I think, again, this is where regulatory incentives, have to come in. Okay, ensuring that operators are being supported. Okay, to operate in an environment where the cost to serve is minimized. If the cost to serve is minimized, then the cost the cost that goes to the consumers will come down as well.
And technically, we're also trying to get more jobs. We're trying to get productivity. You look at countries like China.
Yeah.
We see that most countries say they give an unfair advantage to their producers. They give them subsidies. At this point, that's why they're able to, sell cheaper in most markets. Whatever you're producing, that the cost of production is higher in maybe your country. You go to China, cost of production is lower. What do we do to replicate that kind of scenario here? Well, we see that our manufacturers here they're happy, if you know what I mean. Because since I've been doing this show, the manufacturers have not been happy. They keep complaining about one thing or the other.
So your question is, how do we ensure that?
How do we give them an unfair advantage also?
So if you look at, maybe we should look at the entire ecosystem. And this time around, we are not just, and that's what your question is really talking about. We are not just talking about the financial services sector, all right? And if you look at, even in Africa, countries like South Africa, Morocco, and Kenya, okay? These are countries with what we call international financial centers, okay? That is to say, they have been more deliberate to put in place, certain infrastructure, to assist businesses, to help businesses flourish. All right. So what we need to do, also, we have to do the same thing. Nigeria has to do the same thing. We have to be deliberate about supporting businesses, creating right environment for businesses to strive. And that is what we are doing at EnterpriseNGR in partnership with the federal government, the Lagos State government, coming up with the Lagos International Financial Center. Okay, so the initiative, the financial center, we help in putting together the institutional framework, helping, creating international connections, connecting businesses to business. Connecting businesses to business, connecting business to business. Okay, outside Nigeria, and also to put the right policy environment in place. Now, if we are able to achieve this, Nigeria will be known, particularly Lagos, will be known globally, okay, for what is already known for locally. Because, look at Lagos, for example. It has everything to compete. We are talking about the second largest capital market in Africa by market capitalization. We are talking about the most valuable fintech ecosystem. We are talking about a vibrant banking sector. Okay, so what else do you need to compete? These are the things that you need. You have. Essentially, you have everything.
Right, and I see your report also talks about finance outpacing, the real economy. At this point, we see you did mention, the banks posting record profits, but manufacturing still faces high costs, capital market at record highs, and as you said there, but SMEs are struggling to access affordable credit, pension assets are expanding, agriculture needs more investment, so definitely it's something that we should try to change, but it almost seems as if financial services is acting as the new oil at this point. But how do we keep that momentum going, at this time? So at some point, it could trickle down, to the households and businesses.
I think let me take it from, your comments in that the financial services is looking like the new oil. And that's essentially that's the reality. Okay, and I'll give you an example. In terms of tax collection, the tax revenue collected last year, about 28 trillion naira. Okay, and that was about a 30% increase in a year. And when it comes to corporate tax collection, the entire financial services sector contributed 30%. Okay, more than the oil and gas sector, more than the manufacturing sector, and more than any other sector in the economy. Okay, so it simply means that non-oil sector, the non-oil sector is becoming the good driver for tax revenue for the government. So, unluckily, that's what the Tax Reform Act that were signed last year. That is what they intend in me to do, to ensure that to create that shift. Okay, ensuring that the old tax system is simplified. Ensure that the compliance is being improved upon. And lastly, to ensure that there are other things, but what I'm saying is those three things I'm mentioning now are key. Okay, the third one is bringing in more economic activities into the tax net.
Right.
Okay, so if tomorrow the prices of crude oil collapse, Nigeria, we have nothing to worry. We have nothing to worry about.
Because we have financial services.
Exactly.
All right, we'll definitely keep unpacking that report. Thank you so much, Muritala, Head of Research, EnterpriseNGR. Thank you for coming on the show
Thank you.
today.